when you have the same success as your colonizer, your former enemy, then your success is probably going to benefit them more than it benefits you.
Would you say that again? Say that once more.
Our concept of success has been defined by our enemy. Carter G. Woodson in 1931 said that our new enslavers will be our most educated. Our PhD club will be responsible for keeping us enslaved because you look up to them. They got the Europeans' highest degree. They've been stamped approved by your enemy. And some of us don't even want to hear you unless you've been stamped approved. Well, where did you go to school? They brought me in, paid me $1,500 to speak at Kent State. I'm from DC, Jhutyms. They didn't know I was African. And when I got there, the dean of men says, "You're Mfundishi?" I said, "Yes, and I've already cashed a check." So, where do I speak, you know? I already cashed a check, so you can't get that back, okay, you know. But it was like, they were like, oh, you know. But then he looked down. Oh, he went to the University of Dar es Salaam. He went to Rutgers University. Oh, he taught at the University of Khartoum. Oh, okay, yeah, all right, come on in. In other words, it looked like I was stamped approved. But nothing I had to say had anything to do with those universities, okay? So sometimes we have to do that. But see what happened, we get caught up in their approval of us. What did they tell us when you were young? Y'all are old enough, y'all probably heard the same thing. Get a good what? Education. And what do they mean by a good education? European. A good European education. Right now, we have a whole host of like Nigerians and people from West Africa, and they want to go to Ivy League schools, that's all. And they brag about it. Yeah, I got accepted to all the Ivy League schools. So you're trying to tell me that the most genius people can only get a thorough education by going to their institutions. Then after you get this thoroughly educated European indoctrination, because that's all you're doing is being trained, then the next thing your parents say is get a good what? Job. Stay just over broke. That's what job means. Okay? And excuse the expression, usually you have a jackass of a boss. J-O-B. Now if you got both of them, that's a terrible job. Okay? All right? So we have to understand that paradigm needs to be flushed down the toilet. I graduated from a traditional black college. I went to Norfolk State University in Norfolk, Virginia. And I remember, and I'm one of those guys, we protested, took over the school and set up the first African Studies department. But all they did was give us a Band-Aid where we needed a major operation. They took some handkerchief-head Negroes and said, okay, I want you to teach African history, you teach Afro-American history, you teach African literature. They weren't really trained to take on that job. I remember I had an African literature class. I was a sophomore, and he had me teaching the class. So I'm just saying, and we protested, we couldn't have no African languages. We were at African school, black people. So I'm just trying to let you know what this good education is. This good education that you've just been well trained. Right now in America, the most educated group of people is black women. Black women right now are the most educated group in America. But guess what? Black women make the least amount of money of any group in America. So obviously getting a good education was not the key. In 1816, Africans were only employed 1% of their population. In 2016, we employ 1% of the population. That means that if you're not an entrepreneur, 98% of y'all got to work for your former colonizer and enslaver. You see what kind of condition that is? That's faulty thinking. That logic doesn't even make sense. I believe the last time we had full employment was during slavery. Okay, and we weren't getting paid, but you was employed, okay, all right, you had a job. We have to change our paradigm. So the reason why I push the Madhu Nature is because what it does, it changes our paradigm. It changes the way we think. It changes the way we look at nature. I teach this component. We first have to master the mineral domain. The planet Earth is a mineral. The sun is a mineral. The stars are mineral. And you are made up of the same compound. You are a copper-based person. Your blood is liquid crystal. But we are the most ignorant of the mineral domain. People come by my table and go, Mfundishi, you selling rocks? What's up with that? Have no clue. The mineral domain, totally ignorant. There are mines in Africa that go back over 100,000 years where we were mining semi-precious stones. We've lost the way. We had this connection with Earth, the connection with the stars. We plotted the stars before the rest of the planet woke up. We have to understand that. So we have this relationship. When people ask George Washington Carver, how did you do 300 inventions from the peanut? He says, I just talked to him and they told me what to do. He would get up 4 o'clock in the morning. He would water the plants, talk with them, feed them, cultivate their soil. Now I want to tell you, from reading the Emerald Tablets in Medunetia, secrets were revealed to me. And those secrets said that anytime genuine, unconditional, traditional love is exchanged between two energies, secrets are exchanged. So as we cultivated and worked with the minerals, they told us, oh, your pressure is a little high, you need to pick this up. Oh, you're a little stressed out, you need to go towards this color. We began to have a relationship with nature, and even a dog gets sick, know what grass to go eat. But we're so out of tune with nature, we've lost that. So that's the first element, understanding the mineral domain. The second element is understanding the plant domain. And again, you have a relationship with the plants tell you, they speak to you mentally, spiritually. You get premonitions, you get visions, you get dreams, you are guided. Every place there's a poisonous plant, the antidote to it is right near it. But if you don't have no clue of what's going on, you miss all of that. Your relationship. No herbal plants, no medicinal plants, no what plants are edible. And then you need to have a relationship with them. Then it's the animal domain. Now I know some of y'all are going to be upset because animals were not here to be our food. Animals were not here to be our pets. Animals were not here to be enslaved by us. If you're the highest elevation of the spiritual domain on the planet, you're supposed to be a caretaker. You're supposed to be a protector, not the destroyer. And so animals are not our food base. Animals are not our pets. And animals are not our slaves. Animals are part of the ecosystem of this planet. When they're in their natural habitat, all of them have a function and they contribute to the well-being of the planet. So when you exterminate them, bring them in your house, pet them, domesticate them, what do they say? The African male slave, they broke them like they broke a horse. When the horse is running free and we don't want nobody on him, they say that's a wild horse, he ain't no good. No, that's where the horse is supposed to be. Ain't nobody supposed to be on his back. Now after you broke him, now he can't even find no food. He's totally dependent upon his master. That's a good horse. Look at that paradigm. That's the paradigm we're living in. And so good Negroes have been well trained. No fuss, eat European food, wear European clothes, go to European religious institutions, and that's a good person. If you rebel against that, you wild. I remember my father telling me in Tanzania, he said, son, there's nothing wild about nature. The only wild thing here is the Wazungu, the European. He says everything is in accordance with where it's supposed to be. It's not wild, it's natural. We make things that are natural wild. Your hair is natural. Oh boy, get that woolly stuff off your head. You need a haircut. That's wild. You see how we are defining even ourselves through a European paradigm. The wilderness. No, that's nature. Watch this. If somebody said, bro, watch the terminology here. Man, your breath smells like jungle juice. You'd be like ready to fight. But if you say, your breath smells like a tropical rainforest, you'd be like, oh, thank you. The tropical rainforest and the jungle is the same thing. It's the terminology. Jungle making termination that this is wild, untamed. A rainforest is the natural state where there's heavily wooded area and trees. It's the same thing. So the jungle versus the rainforest. Terminology, your paradigm, how you look at it. You go on a vacation. You go on to lay on the beach. You're already black as smut. You go on to lay on the beach because Europeans say this is what you do on vacation. You go to the Bahamas, you go to Jamaica, you know, and they've defined where you go. You got to change that paradigm. Every time you get, at one time, we were trying to get back to Africa. Every chance we get, we were trying to get home. That's right. Now we have the ability, and ain't nobody trying to get to Africa. We got to change our paradigm. We are the ones we've been waiting for. The fourth paradigm, after the animal domain, then you go to the human domain. You can't understand the human domain perfectly because you're a combination of the mineral, the plant, and the animal. So if you're ignorant of all of them, you're going to be ignorant of who you are. Because now you don't even understand your relationship to all of them and the relationship to the heavens, which is just an extension of this mineral domain. Most of us have no clue. Forget about not knowing history. We don't even know what it is to be human. We don't even have a clue of the power that we possess. Your pineal gland connects you to the whole cosmos. You can feel what's going on Mars, Saturn, Uranus, through your pineal gland. You can feel every human being in this room through your pineal gland. You're in tune with all the minerals and plants of the universe through your pineal gland. It's open. It's a receptive. You can feel it. Someone asked a great master, he says, if you've never been there, how do you know you got there? He said, because I can feel it. He said, the pineal gland is like your GPS. And so, as long as the planet exists, as long as energy is being projected, I can see myself within this hologram. So I always know where I am. Eagles sometimes travel 200 miles in a day looking for food. They don't get lost. Their own GPS system, their pineal gland guides them where they need to be. And that used to be us. Follow the North Star to freedom or whatever. We didn't have a GPS system that was here. And we were in tune with nature. I went to a family reunion once. We had one was in Florida, and then the second one was in Canada, or near Niagara Falls. And I had all these relatives there. And I'm like, how did y'all get here? Because we all had the same great-grandmother. And they said, we walked. Now, it took me 14 hours to drive there in the car. They walked. And then one of them listened to Ed, he said, and we didn't have no shoes. I mean, that just kind of like messed me up because I saw what it took to drive there. It was a different determination. Whatever's necessary to be free. I'm saying, people, if we have that determination today, we will be free tomorrow because we will be pooling our economic resources together. We will be building our own communities. Part of my family lives in a place in Tanzania near Lake Rwanda. And what they do is when a person gets married that day, everybody in the village comes out and they build their home. So when the sun sets, that newly married person has their own house. And everybody in the village is contributing because you know when your child grows up, you know, the same thing's going to happen to him. This reciprocity, what goes around comes around. We call that what? Collective work and responsibility. One of the principles like in Kwanzaa. That's what we need, people. But we got to be operating. Reverend Clemson talked about how the 12 were all working with one accord. When I take people to the Metropolitan Museum, there's one room we go in towards the end. And it shows an incompleted wall inside of a temple. But on this wall are all the elements of what a finished wall looks like. So on one part of the wall, there's just red drawing of what's going to be on the wall. On the second part of the wall, you can see it's being carved back, and the whole wall is being pushed back so it can be raised. The third part, somebody is refining and putting in detail. The fourth part, somebody has sanded down so that it's perfectly smooth. And then the fifth part, somebody is painting. Now, on this wall, all of this is happening simultaneously. That means there's at least 6 different groups of people working on this wall at the same time. And everybody has a responsibility of what they're supposed to be doing towards the completed project. Because all of them can see what the finished product is supposed to be like. All of them understand what freedom is. All of them understand what completion is. All of them understand what fulfilling your goal is. So guess what? They're all eating together. They're all eating the same type of food. They're eating onions and radishes and stuff. But they're all eating that, or you'd be like, oh, you smell like onion. So all of them are eating onion. All of them are eating the same foods. So they're vibing together, working together, thinking together, because they have a collective goal. African people have lost that. We don't have a collective goal. Freedom ain't even in our, some of us think we're free now. We're more enslaved now than we were in 1816. And so how do we change that paradigm? I speak about 5 or 6 other African languages. If you speak Swahili and you still got to, you just be crazy speaking Swahili. You speak Yoruba, you just be crazy speaking Yoruba. So speaking an African language isn't the key to liberation, but it does help you connect with the culture, which is part of that journey. Language is the best expression of a culture. If you don't understand the language of a people, you won't understand their culture. You'll always be on the outside looking in. You have to learn some words can't even be translated into English. And English is probably one of the worst languages on the planet. It's the only language that has the word try in it. Nobody else even know what that is. What do you mean try? You either do it or you don't do it. I'm gonna try to be there. That means I'm not gonna see you. Okay, you know, we can't translate it to Swahili. You're gonna try. No, you're gonna be there or what? You know, Nina Kuinda Sasa now, you know, okay, so, and I hear people saying all the time, I need to make this now. There's quite a few people, they even got some young brother now on the internet saying, no one can translate the Medu Neter. I've heard even some of our scholars saying, no one can read the Medu Neter, that it's a lost language. No, that is so far. And none of these people are linguists who are making that statement. In fact, the people who are making the statement only can speak English. I don't think they're an authority on what can be done. It's a language that can be recovered. It's attached to, we belong to a group now where we have 18 African languages, and we're comparing the Medu Neter to 18 different African languages, and almost all of them fit in. They're all Bantu languages, you know, from the interior of Africa, from Ga, Tree, Shanti, Shanti Tree, from Fang, all of the Hausa, Yoruba, all of them are connected to the Medu Neter. Swahili, all of them, all the way to South Africa. I'm in touch with some people who are shamans, Zulu shamans from South Africa, and some of the same Medu Neter words from South Africa are in ancient Kemet. So we can recover this word, we can do it. And let me just say this, if something is lost, use your pineal gland. There's something called the Akashic Records. Anybody ever heard of that? The Akashic Records simply say that everything that has been said, everything that has been done is still being done, and you can tap into it if you have the right spiritual connection. That's right. And so that means that you have the ability to go back and retrieve. Let me just give you a perfect example. The European Jews, in the 1940s when they stole the land and well, the land was given to them and did from somebody else, the Palestinians, and they created Israel. They were not speaking Hebrew. Most of them were speaking Yiddish, Russian, all these other languages. They had to come together. They knew what the Hebrew alphabet looked like. They knew what the sounds were. They had to pull all their linguist scholars together, and they reorganized the Hebrew language and made it official. And now that's their language. It might be slightly a little different from the ancient Hebrew, but it's theirs, and no one is questioning that. So when African people try to do that, oh, that ain't the real stuff. You define yourself. See, that's the wrong paradigm. Here we go again. Almost all those people who make those statements are operating from somebody else's paradigm and actually hating on you, trying to recover yourself. That's what Sankofa is. Sankofa is go back and fetch what you have lost, what you have forgotten, or what was stolen, and bring it forth to the front. That which is good. And if you have some messed up stuff, leave it back there. Take the best that you have and bring it forward.
The golden age.
That's it. That's what has to happen as African people. And my teacher, Dr. Sinjeti, Dr. Jacob Crothers, and Sister Brichetti spent time with Diop. And Diop had told them that we're not serious about recovering our story until we learn the Medu Neter. Because our story is rooted there. See, the Medu Neter is not just Kemet. The Medu Neter is Africa. Kemet was the mouthpiece of the African continent. The first time we even see a petroglyph of an Ankh is carved in South Africa out of diorite. It goes back 75,000 years. And the symbol of Ra, circle with the dot in it, it's in South Africa, all the way to the top of our continent. So at the first place where we see a falcon, Haru, at the head of their astrological calendar. Haru, 100,000 years old. So Kemet, which is only, 6,000 years ago, up to a little over 2,000 years ago, so that's a 4,000 year period, is just the mouthpiece of the interior of Africa. Right. That's all. They recorded it in stone. If you're in the tropical rainforest, it's going to deteriorate the next season. You can't keep things stored up. Even now, when I went to Mali, the writings from ancient Mali and them is almost all destroyed from deterioration, not being well kept, even though they're in the library. A lot of it is destroyed. And that's only, 500, 600, 700 years old. So you can imagine Kemet is able to preserve things for 6,000. When you look at the Mirkut text, the pyramid text, this is from writings that go back before the last great flood. But it's just being recorded during the first golden age of ancient Kemet. So that's why it's so important for us to go back and learn how to read this. Would the rabbit take the fox's translation of their sacred books? Well, that's what we're doing. We got a fox, a slick fox all around us, and we're taking his word for what our ancestors left us. That is insane. That's upside down, inside out, and backwards. And we think it's okay. There's not a museum in the world, it's a national museum, that has Kemet, ancient Egypt, inside of Africa. They separated every one. If you go to the Louvre Museum, the largest museum in the world, Africa is on one side of the museum on a different floor. Egypt is at the top and on another floor on the opposite end. And it's next to Greece and Rome. Go to the Louvre Museum, the second largest museum in the world, in London. Two different floors. You have to go to the third floor and then part of the first floor in the corner, and Africa's in the basement. So I just did a lecture there in January, okay? Not even close. They don't want no connect. Go to the Metropolitan, which is the third largest museum in the world. At the Metropolitan, when you come in, if you go all the way to your extreme left, is ancient Africa, West Africa, Africa south of the Sahara, or Africa period. If you go to the extreme right on the other side of the museum is ancient Egypt and Greece. So they're making sure that you don't make no connection. If you go in their library, there's not one book in the library written by an African scholar.
Whoa.
I mean, we've had some great people, Asa Hilliard, Dr. Benz, none of their books are in a museum that is controlled by the state or the government. Not one. Even on our own topics. Whoever controls the situation defines it. You see, and we haven't addressed any of this. And then we wonder why we're messed up, why we're upside down, inside out, and backwards. Why, even though we got PhDs, 2 of them, 3 of them, and we still haven't made any inroads in terms of changing the economic status of African people. Let me just say this here so people will have a clear idea of what I'm saying. Another thing that made Kemet, see, we're not even examining that part of Kemet. We're not examining their connection to nature. That's a lecture all by itself. Kemet's connection to nature is phenomenal. You can have a PhD just on that, on how they were connected to nature, how they used the Happy River, how they used the desert, how they used their trade and commerce. Kemet is the first major conglomerate of import-export in the world. They were able to take all of these places in Africa and be able to bring their merchandise to Kemet and then disseminate it through the rest of the world. And so they control commerce, economics. They're the first people to import and export honey. They had barges where the bees would just cultivate the honey, and they could determine what kind of honey would be, because that's the only thing that the bees could eat on that barge. And they had 101 different cures that honey had for the body. Most amputees would not have to be amputated if you would just wash it and put honey on it. It's the best antibiotic known to man. Just hundreds of years, plus honey can go for 100,000 years without spoiling. Okay, so I'm just giving you just a little tidbit. What happened to other African countries, what happened is that they were not manufacturing and producing. They had the raw materials. The North culture, which is smelting of iron, and the reason why it fell is because they cut down all the trees, and then the people couldn't sustain themselves. They weren't in harmony with what? Their environment. Kemet was in harmony with it. Look at the places they extracted the gold. When the gold got low, then that civilization crashed. Each one is a story almost like that. Kemet was able to produce so it could sustain itself for 4,000 years. It produced. We have to get into production. Go to Ghana every year. Ghana is the leading exporter of cocoa bean, of the cocoa. There's no manufacturing plants in Ghana. Chocolate in Ghana costs 2 times as much as it does here. And we ain't got nary cocoa bean. So Nestle's and all of them are there. They get the cocoa bean, they come back, they manufacture it. They got people working for slave wages. And we have to change our paradigm, our thinking. We have the natural resources. And see, we're in a perfect position right now. Africans in the diaspora, especially America, have the largest economic resources to our availability right now on the whole planet among African people. We are the most educated African people on the planet. In somebody else's paradigm, but we're the most educated. So if we can take our expertise and then take our money to Africa, which is the richest continent in the world by far, not even close, nobody else. Europe don't hardly have any resources. China don't have no resources. Japan don't have no resources. We have resources. But somebody has kept us apart. Because remember, we're not trying to get home anymore. We're not trying to get free. We're not trying to liberate ourselves. And I'm not saying everybody in Africa just get up, in America, get up and go to Africa. But there needs to be this relationship back and forth. Most European Jews Their education isn't complete until they make a pilgrimage back to Israel. And even a Jewish boy here has to go back to Israel and serve in the army and then come back. Then that allows him to go back and forth. Because he understands there's an obligation to their so-called motherland now. We have to have an obligation to go back. And we have to create this. And it's okay. We just got to change our thinking paradigm. Now, after you get to the human domain, the fifth domain is the spiritual domain. Some of us want to start there and then we don't understand anything else. The spiritual domain permeates the mineral, the plant, the animal, the human. Through the spiritual domain, now you know how I'm supposed to manifest and use all of those domains to my disposal. I have one more formula I want to share with you. This is on how we as an African people have to be able to sustain ourselves economically. Number one, find out what you love, what you're good at. What would you do for free, even if you weren't getting paid? What do you love to do? Everybody loves to do something. And what are you good at? Because you might love it and can't do it. You love basketball and can't ball at all, okay? So what do you love and what are you good at? Let's put those two together. Number two, after you know you love it and you're kind of good, become an expert at it. Become an expert at it. Then number three, you will be compensated for it because you're an expert at it and you love to do it. You would do it for free, but now people will pay you to do it. Number four, take that financial expert and then reinvest it into yourself and diversify it so that the money works for you and don't you just work for money. And then at that point, it uplifts you, it uplifts your people, and it uplifts humanity. And it has to be based upon ma'at. Ma'at is truth, justice, righteous, harmonious, balance, reciprocity. So if you have that formula, you can't go wrong. Ma'at has to be there because you can tell me, look, bro, I'm gonna be a drug dealer. I love it, I'm good at it, and I'm getting paid. But is it based upon ma'at? Is it uplifting you, your family, and humanity? No, so just scratch the drug dealer out, bros. Okay? It has to be about ma'at. And you look, what an African village used to do, what the chiefs used to do, is take an inventory of everything they needed to survive. That's what they did in ancient Kemet. What do we need? We need food, we need shelter, we need clothing, we need transportation, we need a defense force. We need an educational system. And we need a facility in order so we can have a spiritual oneness. You take that inventory and then you make sure what some Jewish synagogues do, they take that inventory and as kids come up, they say, okay, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be our lawyer, you're going to be our construction worker. They tell the kids almost what they're going to be, almost. And then they give them scholarships to go to school, they pay, and their obligation, and they sign a contract, and that kid, when he gets his degree, has to come back to that community and has to give 5 to 10 years back to the community because that community sponsored them. We have, and they got that program from us. Jews didn't make it up. And we've abandoned it because we want to be like somebody else. And so what ancient Kemet do, all those formulas I'm getting from ancient Kemet, from going back to ancient Kemet, they're telling us how to be dynamic. And they always show excellence. I showed the slide, people are plowing in the field, and the guy got a white pleated outfit on, he's plowing. I don't see no dirt on him. His wife is behind him with a beautiful white pleated, and she's sprinkling seeds, none of them dirty. Now you know people get dirty when you're plowing, but they're trying to show you excellence. They're trying to show you that we are projecting excellence every chance we get. We have to begin to do that. When they look at our story, we are projecting excellence. So now your children are looking at excellence. Your children's children are looking at excellence. So what's their model? Excellence. That's not our model today. we have to show a model of excellence. And that excellence has to stem that we are African people. Somebody gave me a clip on the internet a day ago. It was on the Olympics, and it was on the women's running events. And it had first, second, and third was a relay. So there was like four, what's that, 16 people? What? 12 people up on the podium. Every person was an African woman. It was like there was racism. Everybody on the running event was African. Africans not from Africa, Africans in the diaspora, Africans from America took first, Jamaica was second, Africans from the UK I think was third, but the idea was Africans. And India has never won a gold medal in any running event. So 15 years ago, or almost 20 years ago now, they went hunting for black people in India, Africans, because everybody's black. But they went hunting for African people. Anybody saw that special? Well, anyhow, they went to each little village in India and sought out black people. And they gave them a scholarship and brought them to like an athletic club and stuff like that and start training them. And the last Olympics, they won their first medal. They got a third place. One of the Africans got a third place, you know. But everybody's understanding that the power. Now, let me just say this, y'all, because we got our paradigm messed up. In order to be the fastest runner, physical attributes start what? Mentally. In order to be the most agile, shift, that's all mental first. So by professing that Africans are superior athletes, or saying that Africans are what? Superior mentally. We just don't get it. We don't get it. That those powers that we have, we're the most creative, the most dynamic people on the planet, but we're not using it for ourselves. So all those Africans on the podium, but they weren't representing Africa. They were representing our colonizers, people who had colonized us. Great Britain, Jamaica, United States, you know, all of this. So we're making all of our colonizer nations look great. At some point, we have to do this for ourselves. How about there was a United States of Africa? Do you understand how powerful that would be? That scares the rest of the world. It really scares Europe. It scares China. And it definitely scares Japan. They are all frightened of something like that. I had a class with Dr. John Henry Clark back in the 80s, and he had us read a book called The Canary and the Scarecrow. Anybody ever read that? It was dealing with European War II. And Hitler had promised Tojo, Japan, that if they defeated America and helped them in the war, he would give them Africa as the reward. They would exterminate the African people, and Japan could relocate and take the whole African continent. That's one of the reasons why Japan actually attacked America from the west. Because the deal was Japan would come from the West Coast, and Hitler, after he got finished doing Europe, would come from the East. But, you know, that didn't work out. Okay. But I'm just letting you know. So Dr. John Henry Clark said, we have no friends in the world. No friends. Our only friends that we have is us. And until we can work together in operational unity, if we, you have to understand, even though America is a nation and it has many different religions within it, people all come together to work for the one nation. If you go to any nation, it's like that. And so we can't let religion divide us. Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, Hindu. But we have to recognize that we're an African people and we have a common enemy, we have a common goal and a common objective. Until we can come up with a platform, like people said Obama he didn't do anything really for black people in 8 years. We didn't give him an agenda. The Jews gave him an agenda. As soon as he got there, he had to meet with the Jews. The gays had an agenda. As soon as he got there, he passed more laws about gay people than anybody. We didn't give him an agenda. Now, some people say, well, we shouldn't have had to give him a gender. He's black. But he's just a figurehead. There's people that he's accountable to who are actually paying his salary, and it's not our taxes. Okay? You have to come forth with an agenda. African people, as long as we're still thinking like Afropeans, we won't have an agenda that will liberate us. We're still upside down, inside out, and backwards. And Carter G. Woodson was clear, even in 1930, that our most educated blacks will be our new enslavers. So we have these degrees, we're making this money, and we're giving it right back. And it's not going to us, our people, or our inheritance. I was just reading something that said it would take 288 years for Africans in America just to get even with Europeans in America in terms of heritage, in terms of passing down wealth. So you see where we are. So all of this, a program like this is like a Band-Aid on a major operation where we need to change our paradigm, change our thinking. We need to change how we look at nature, how we look at the mineral domain, how we look at the plant domain, how we look at the animal domain, how we look at other human beings, because there's only one race on the planet, and we are the foundation of that. We have various little species to the race, like we have different kind of dogs, but they are dogs. Okay, so there's only human beings on the planet that can interrelate and intermarry and have sex and have babies with each other. Other than that, you wouldn't be able to. You can't have babies with a gorilla. You can't have babies with a monkey. You can't have babies with a dog. You can only have babies within that race or in that species. So we can all interlock. So there's only one race. And so, but we have to come together based upon our connection to nature. And our connection to nature has shown us different. In ancient Kemet, everything, if you were an engineer and you were building a building, your building had to be aligned with Ra. So you had to know where Ra was coming up, where Ra was setting during each of the seasons. And we go inside of some temples and it's light all day because the architectural structure is, as soon as the sun comes up, that light emanates through that temple until it goes down, that temple is lit. So the architect engineer had to be in tune with nature. He had to understand the rising and setting of the sun. So y'all see what's happening? There's a relationship with nature. I want to just do this before I close out. I want to take a couple of things here. This is what happens when other people define your paradigm. People will say, oh, Mfundishi, y'all just worshiping idols and statues and false gods. That's somebody else. That's the fox telling you what rabbits do. You didn't ask the rabbits what was that? So people, first of all, in case nobody has no knowledge, I know we have a pretty educated group here. I've seen y'all at all the lectures. They are principles and laws. The Necharu are principles and laws. That's like somebody saying, don't pay attention to nature. The weather don't matter. We don't care about the sun. See how far you're going to go. Okay? And so we were in tune with nature. So some of you heard me talk about the falcon.
Can you talk about that falcon? I find that fascinating.
So now I'm going to distinguish African symbolism from symbolic thought and show you what symptomatic thought is. Symptomatic thought means I intrinsically know what it is. Other people look at this and they go, it's a bird with a hat. You know, that's supposed to represent a pharaoh? That's stupid. That's symbolism. That don't even make no sense. That person is totally disconnected from nature and doesn't understand symptomatic thought at all. And so the ancient Necharu, who are living around the falcon, understand that it flies faster than any bird or any animal on the planet. The pelican falcon that was found in Egypt can go 285 miles per hour.
Ooh.
285. You ever been in the car going 100? You know, 285. And he has the keenest eyesight of any creature on the planet. He has an extra eyelid that can look directly at the sun. Our ancestors looked at that as like looking at the Creator. He can, without damaging his eye. No other creature can do that. He can swoop down on a mouse and spot a mouse under a leaf while he's a mile in the sky. Jet planes and bombers are trying to imitate the falcon. He can hunt within a day, within a 200-mile radius of his home. Swarm. You can look at a falcon, he can see the current of wind in the air, just like you can see the highway. Some falcons can hover for 20 miles without batting their wings. They're just in the current. And so the Africans are looking at this and they're saying, my goodness, this is dynamic. He lives on the highest tree or perches on the highest mountain. He can go 20, 40 meters under the water to catch a fish. That means he can calculate the speed of the fish, the bend of light in the water, and when he goes under and comes up with the fish in his tie lines, he's dry. Aerodynamics. So the Africans is like, oh my God, this is miraculous. I want to be like a falcon. I want to have the attributes of a falcon. Even though I'm a human, I'm not turning into a falcon, but I want to have these attributes so that I can be. Every creature on the planet, when a storm comes, seeks shelter. The falcon flies over the storm. So Jhutyms says, when a storm hits your life, don't seek shelter. Rise like a falcon over it and overcome it. Okay, so we can use the parallels from something symptomatically in our life. That's symptomatic thinking.
Yes, yes.
All right,
yes.
so you see what's happening. So now the king wants you to understand that he is like a mighty falcon. He has no rivalry in the sky. You can't even hide from him. He can see you. He can look directly at Ra and get messages. Okay, so just like the falcon. So now this is symptomatic thought, but I use a symbolic image to depict the ruler of Upper and Lower Kemet. And so it's not no spookism. You can go through now and go see a falcon. So it's not something I made up. Het Haru, the golden calf. The cow, when it became domesticated, became a source of milk, protein for Africans who were living in an area where there wasn't much protein to be found. The cow also, when he has dung, only certain types of mushrooms grow in that dung. The supersizing mushroom, which is hallucinogenic, which can take you on journeys that, so I know some of us are already on journeys, but a different type of journey, okay? At one time, everybody in the village took that journey. So when they said, did you see the guy with the 3 heads, the message he gave us? Everybody was, yeah, we saw him. We saw him last night, because they all had the mushroom, okay? Now, as the cow became less extinct, only the priest would take the mushroom. So you would have to come to the priest and he would give you a message. Yeah, the guy with the 3 heads, with the 1 eye in the middle of the head said, we need to do so-and-so. Everybody was like, oh, okay, we understand that. But see, symptomatically, we all knew it existed. Because at one time, we had the mushroom. We knew that the 3-headed man's there.
Yeah.
He's there helping us. He's a guide.
That's right.
Now, 5 generations later, young kids don't know nothing about the 3-headed man. You go, son, I saw the 3-headed man. Like, okay, mom. All right, we get away from you. Okay, so he only knows it symbolically. He doesn't know it symptomatically. But what the ancients did is that they made Het Haru, used to be Bat. That was an ancient name, Bat. Then became Het Haru. That became a symbol of the Great Mother. And so even in the European parallel, when Moses took a long time and they collected all the gold, they made a what? Golden calf. It showed you that the so-called ancient Hebrews were worshiping the Great Mother before they worshiped the Father. So I'm just going back just to give you a little idea. So the Great Mother, even the Zulu not the Zulu, I want to say the Maasai. The Maasai, the cow is sacred. In fact, the reason why the cow is sacred in India is because we travel there. Okay, so you have to understand, this concept. We are the original inhabitants every place on the planet. And so she is a symbol of the great mothering. Sometimes they'll even show the king sucking the udders of the cow, getting the message directly, this link to nature, because the cow understood nature to its highest degree. So it's not that we were just worshiping cows. We understood that this cow was necessary for the survival of people living in a certain geographical location. And we gave honor and homage to that. And now people say you're worshiping the cow. No, we're worshiping the attributes that this cow had that enabled us to survive and flourish. Not just survive, but survive and flourish. Sekhmet, the lioness, the daughter of Ra. Now some people say, come on, Mfundishi, a woman with a lion head, this is ridiculous. I'm like, no, look, you have no clue what nature is. First of all, why do you think they call the lion the king? Because when it comes to smart, now it doesn't mean the lion jumps on an elephant, okay, all right? So he's smart enough to know that. But if it's time of a drought, I've seen 2 or 3 lions take down a sick elephant. An elephant who wandered away from the pride. 2 or 3 lions will take him, one to the front, one to the back, one grabs him on the throat, one grabs him at the gonads, the elephant turns around, they all up. And if the elephant falls, he don't get up. The lion is the king because he's the smartest hunter and fighter. Lion can take down a water buffalo 4 times his weight. He's a smart fighter. And the most tenacious of the lions is the male, but the most fierce hunter is the female. She does most of the hunting. The lion domain, the male lion be chilling most of the day. He's actually the one taking care of the kids. The little cubs jumping all over his head. He smacks them every once in a while, but he's the one. Now let me say this. The lion is so tenacious, and everybody knows how bad he is before he goes to sleep. And only the male lion can roar. The lion roars out for about 4 or 5 minutes before he goes to sleep. Arrgh! I want everybody to know where I'm sleeping. Because if you roll up in here, you dinner. He's letting you know this is where I am. So there's no mistake if you come up in here. Okay? 4 or 5 hyenas will jump a female lioness and try to take her prey. But if it's a dozen hyenas and the male lion comes, they scatter. The lion will just break their backs. Bam, bam, bam. He's a tenacious fighter. So now in ancient Kemet, if you look at the Norma palette, you see the king depicted as a great lion. If you see all the male deities, they either have a lion's tail or a bull's tail. The age of Taurus was the great bull, and then the age of Leo was the great lion. So we were in sync with nature. And because of symptomatic thought, we already knew what that was about. So it wasn't you were trying to be like a lion, you wanted to bring some of those characteristics into your village. If you were the chief, you wanted to be like the lion. Okay, so I'm just showing you. So Sekhmet, the daughter of Ra, and the reason why they use the daughter of Ra, because listen, sometimes the king don't know about his son, because the son might be scheming up on his title, so you got to watch the son sometime. But daddy's daughter will do anything for daddy. So some of the royal guardians were women. The chief's daughters became royal guardians. Even in ancient China, some of the most fierce guardians were women because they will protect daddy's domain. And so if you know anything about the story of Sekhmet, the daughter of Ra, she's on a mission. And Ra has her to clean up everybody who's doing isfet, wrongdoings. But she found out that everybody's foul. So she started killing everybody. So the other Neteru run to Ra and said, listen, you got to do something about your daughter. He was like, y'all handle it. I said, no, we ain't messing with her. He was saying, listen, send Jhuty. So Jhuty, the Ibis crane, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding goes, and he tricks her. He says, oh, she's got infatuated with blood. So he turns the Nile River red and tells her, there's all the blood you can have. And she jumps in the Nile, starts wrapping it up, but it was red wine. She got drunk, and then Jhuty transferred her into Basset. the beautiful black cat. And so black cat is music, adornment. So brothers, there's always two sides of your woman. One side is Kemet, the other side is the gentle black cat. You want to nurture that side. So I'm just going to do one more. This is Asar. Asar in ancient time was called the crop, the corn. He represents resurrection, rebirth, renewal. Every year the corn comes back. People can feed themselves. They harvest themselves. He became a nourishment. At one time he was known as the Happy, the energy of the Happy River that brought inundation. And so they understood that their food source, their life force, was connected to Asar. So he became the great father. He was known as harmonious balance. He was the great giver. He was associated with the planet Saturn, but also the good side. Saturn is the planet of extremes. So Asar was that extreme good. But he has to have a mate, Aset, who represents the balance. And then his son was Haru, and that was the first trinity. In ancient Kemet, you had several great trinities. Before Narmer united Upper and Lower Kemet, you had Khnum, the molder. This is where Europeans got the idea of man comes from the black dust, the dust of the earth, and the Quran from the black mud. The molder, Khnum means molder, and it was Khnum, Anuket, and Satet. That was its holy trinity. Then when the unification of Kemet came, you had Ptah. You had Ptah, Sekhmet, and Atum. Atum, okay, Nefer Atum. Then you moved to the Pyramid Age, and you had Ra. And you had Ra, had Haru, and Atum. Later, which became Adam, first person, okay. Then, the second golden age, they issued in Amen, the unseen creative force of the universe. And it was Amen, Mut, and Kinsu. And for 3,000 years, it was Asar, Aset, and Haru. So all of these, we gave trinities to the world, this idea. But the trinity was family. It wasn't two brothers, it wasn't two sisters. It was a brother, a sister, and a child. Sometimes it was a daughter, sometimes it was the son. And so this concept, being in relationship with nature. So people, we didn't have any gods and goddesses in ancient Kemet. We weren't worshiping idols. We say there's 4 ways to honor your ancestors. Number 1, you speak their name, the way they spoke it. Number 2, we honor and do their great works. We honor and do their great works. That's what we're doing here. We're honoring the great works of our ancestors. Number 3, we complete their incompleted works. So that's another thing we're doing. We've lost our mind. So this is some incomplete stuff that has to be recycled. We have to remember who we are, who we were, so that we can go forward in greatness. Number 4, we leave images and edifice of them behind, so that we'll know what the ancestors look like. Okay, that's important. Think about it. Every park you go into, you see some wazungu on a horse or something, right? They're doing that. They took our formula, and now they're doing it. And you go to Washington, D.C., they got, Washington sitting up there looking like her, Ursa Ma'at Ra, and they tell you, the artists said they were imitating ancient Kemet when they did the Washington Monument. When they did, where's the one where they have the 4 people, the 4 presidents up on the Mount Rushmore? They were imitating ancient Kemet. They were imitating Ramses II, Ursa Ma'at Ra, with the 4 statues of him, okay? So their greatness is imitating us, and then we're not even doing it. That means every black community, you need to have a statue of somebody great. I like it at the corner on Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard and Malcolm in 125th Street. There's a picture of Adam Clayton Powell there. You need to see that. Yeah. If you go around the corner, they got a picture of Harriet Tubman. Right. We need to see African art throughout the African community. And African art that's reflective of the greatness that we have left behind. So the children will say, Mommy, who's that? Oh, wow, yeah, I'm going to read about that. I want to be like that. Okay, so we need to do this. So those are 4 things. Speak their names the way they spoke it. So don't go King Tut. His name was Tut Ankh Amen. Median Amen. So you need to know his name, speak it. Know their great works, like Imhotep. Even the Europeans were idoling him. Asclepius, the head of all that. All people who were doing the law degree, all people who get a doctorate have to do pledge to Imhotep. That's giving homage to great people. You're following in their steps. And then we're trying to do, that means we're still doing innovative work. We're still creating. You still have a house of experts. So that gives me another formula I want to give you. Every village has to have a council of esteemed ancestors. Those are ancestors who've already laid a black print that you can use as a blueprint for success. They've already done it. So you have them, so it's clear about where you're going. Then you have a council of esteemed elders who are now carrying out that work and who've been doing that work for 30, 40 years and now can give you counsel on how to do that. Thirdly, you have a council of experts. That's in the various fields: linguists, mathematicians, scientists, agriculturalists. You have these experts, and the experts are accountable to the elders. And the elders are accountable to the ancestors. And so the masses of people now are learning from the experts, and the experts are setting up an educational in each area so that you can become an expert. Your children become experts. And then you have the scribes who are to record all of this. Ancient Kemet left this model for us. So if we don't do anything else, we need to know our community need the esteemed ancestors, the esteemed elders, and the experts in each one of the fields. And then we need to have institutions of scribes that can disseminate this information and record it for our children and for our namesake. That's not rocket science, y'all. That's pretty clear. So the Medu Neter is an example already of that. I talk about if you take all the ancient languages and put them together, it doesn't equal 1/100th of the Medu Neter. We can't say that about Sanskrit, cuneiform. We can't do that for any other language. Only the Medu Neter, and it's still there. The writing is still on the wall, waiting for you. And that writing, just like I went through this, teaches you about nature. See, English, every language almost do we have on the planet now is abstract. That means it's totally symbolic. Abstract means that if I give you a faulty definition of what that is, you're just going to perpetuate that because you don't really know why it's that. If you ever walked through the park and found the A growing up, anybody ever seen a B growing in the park or a big C just coming out of the ground? No, these are all abstract concepts. But in Medu Neter, when I show you the hawk vulture, I can show you one. When I show you I can show you the leg and the foot of the person. The arm. I can show you all these symbols in nature. Sa, the duck. I can show you all these symbols in nature that still exist. That's symptomatic. Now I put a sound next to it and a meaning next to it. And in ancient Kemet, everything almost has 3 levels to it. It can be 4, depends on, that would be more symbolic or spiritual. But at least 3 levels. So if I show you Haru. So one level, Haru is actually a falcon. Another level, Haru is the king. Another level, Haru is the daylight, the light of Ra. So those are 3. Then there's a spiritual level. Haru represents higher consciousness. So we took one word in English, a bird is a bird. I don't care if you got a PhD, it don't change, it's a bird, you know. And Kemet, all these levels, because I'm in tune with nature and I know how to translate that symptomatically. And so our children, I saw internet, this woman had her child, she was in the park, a zoo, and there was a chicken there. And the little girl must have been about 3, and the mother said, "What's that?" And the girl said, "It's a lion." She said, "Ain't no lion, look at it." She said, "Oh, it's chicken McNuggets." She saw the bird and she translated chicken McNuggets. You see, that's retarded thinking. And she was saying, "Yes, baby." That's our relationship to nature. You know, you see a bird and you think of chicken McNuggets. You ever see one of those cartoons where y'all stranded on a boat and the person looked like a turkey? Yes. You know, I don't want to be around nobody that got that type of stuff in their head. You know, they just have, you know. So anyhow, people, we have to elevate our thoughts. We have to get off of our head. We have to get the proper spatial perspective of the world. We have to recapture our language. We need to recapture our story, not his story, our story. And we need to put it in a proper spatial perspective. We need to see, we're talking about how the educational system is jacked up, but we're not developing one ourselves and put it in place. There is a Council of Independent Black Institutions, and they're almost out of business. When I was a member in 1970-something, we had 200 independent Black institutions that belonged to the organization. Then charter schools came back out, and that cut that down to about 50. Because people said, well, if we can get an Afrocentric school and we don't have to pay, see, we don't know that we have to invest in our children's education. We have to invest in other people understand. Everybody understands that but us. Now there's less than 20 schools, independent schools in the whole country, that's teaching from an Afrocentric thought from pre-K up towards high school. We went from 200 and something in the 70s to less than 20. Charter schools have been coming in and out in waves to destroy independent schools. In the 1900s, there was over 5,000 independent African schools in America. 5,000! The government put out charter schools and it put 90% of them out of business. Then in the 1930s, after the independent African schools began to pop up again around the country. Over 1,000. After the European War II, and then they came back in with charter schools, all of them went out. Then in the 1960s, it arose again, but I told you charter schools came back. See, a charter school is still just a public school. And they allow you some community control, but then after your teachers still have to go and get certified by the Board of Education. They still have to be stamped approved by Europeans, even though it's an independent African school. And then they'll let you have your curriculum, but then after 3 years, these are mandatory classes you gotta teach. So it just turns back into a regular public school. And they've done this for us over the last 100 years, ups and downs. Every time we get it together, they come back out. And then after 10 years, those schools go out of business. And then you're right back to the regular public school again. And we haven't learned our lesson. So I'm here, if we change our paradigm, we're not worried about that. We understand that you have to you have to create the institution, you have to develop the curriculum that's not designed just to go in to be an employee. It's designed to fill all those things that your community needs. You need what? You need the engineer. You need the agriculturists. You need the scientists. You need the scribes. You need the teachers. So your educational system is based upon producing everything that you need. And then you stamp your own children approved.
Right.
Y'all understand that?
Yes.
And you don't stop at high school. You have to go to your higher degrees also. So you don't send your best. We send our best kids off to Harvard, to Yale, to the Ivy League school. And then you come back looking like Skippy Gates or something like that.
With a white boy or a white woman.
Yes. You know, so that's what happens. So we have to, from the cradle to the grave, we have to be in charge of educating our children with a curriculum that's reflective of nature and ourselves, which is part of nature. And Kemet still gives us the best example. During the second golden age under Mentuhotep, he made the scribe the most sought after position in the nation. Because no matter what you did in ancient Kemet, you needed a scribe to record it. The military needed a scribe to ration the food out, to make sure people got paid, to make sure the mission, everything was recorded. The farmers needed the scribe to record it, to sell their market. The government needed a scribe to, to document everything. Everybody, marriage, government, everything needed a scribe. So that was created by us. And now we don't have no scribes in the neighborhood. You got scribes in your neighborhood? Somebody raise their hand when they got scribes in their neighborhood that you know of. Okay, you see, so that means we gotta get our news from Eyewitness News or television, Channel 5, Channel 2. Y'all believe that stuff?
No.
They only show you catastrophe. That's to keep you at edge and to keep you agitated and to keep you confused.
And in pain.
Right. And to let you know how hopeless you are. As opposed to showing your power. I'm sure the news could show some black kid got straight A's. Some guy just graduated. That don't make the news. Okay, so we need to be able to control our destiny. That's media. I see some cameras here, television. We need our own channel. And I'm going to talk about BET. And people, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for it. So we have to have a common collective goal, economically, politically, spiritually, and it has to be manifest a reflection of where we want to go. And you can. I would like to address, I didn't get a chance to do a question and answer last time, so I'd like to address any questions, the little Q&A, on anything I've said, or people who came to my last lecture when I talked about the power of connection.
Okay, can you kind of come up front? Hey, Brother Charles and Sister Colia in Lafayette. They'll be with us next week. I think Brother Charles is going to speak. Again, we're excited seeing all of you here. Thanks for coming. We are going to do a question and answer, but when you talked about the lion, everything began to make sense on why the villagers were so, they were so in awe of the lion. They treated him that way, even though they took him out.
It was respect.
The respect that they had from the lion. So after listening to you, I got a much deeper understanding. Those who want to ask questions, please come forth so we can get you on.
I heard you talk about the pineal gland, how it opens up us to everything in the universe. But I also talk a lot about the hypothalamus, which is also the gland that makes us respond to music and puts us in tune to the vibrations of the universe. I would like for you to elaborate a little bit more on that. And I want to thank you for saying that our elders and our family need to connect with nature. I was like around 12 years old, and my grandfather's Native American, and I came in one day and I saw my grandfather. I didn't understand what it was, but he was in a trance, now that I think about it. And when I walked up on the porch, and I said, oh, he didn't see me, and I put my hand on his shoulder. I said, oh, Granddaddy Diddy, I said, oh, are you all right? What you doing? And he said, oh, I'm just listening to the grass and the trees grow. So when you're 12 years old, you start laughing. So I started laughing. I said, Granddaddy, you doing what? You're not watching it? You're listening to it? And he says, yes, child. I'm listening to the trees and the grass grow. And now that I'm a little older and I sit in the yard, my pineal gland, along with the hypothalamus, being in tune, when I'm open up, when I'm not thinking about the rent or some problem that came up with my girlfriend or the boss, and I'm just sitting there and I'm opened up, I laugh at myself because I can hear the trees and the grass grow. So I just wanted to remind you, because my grandfather was in the house, and thank you for that. And the pineal and the hypothalamus is the most important gland we have as a people side.
And they work kind of together.
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
Symbiotic, right, and the serotonin helps tap into it. But it allows you to tap into the vibration. See, people, when you meditate, like our grandfather was, that you're listening to divinity. Right. When you are praying, you are speaking to divinity. And some of y'all confuse praying with begging. God, I need a new car. God, I need a woman. God, I need a man. That's begging. That ain't prayer. Prayer usually comes in terms of affirmations. Prayers come in gratitude. You start out by saying, thank you for allowing me to have another day. Thank you for giving me breath. Thank you for giving me a mission to be on. Thank you for giving me the strength to be able to do. So you start off like that. When you go to bed at night, Creator, thank you for allowing me to have this day. And all the things that I did not accomplish, give me the strength to accomplish them tomorrow. During my dream state, you give me premonitions so that I can solve the problems of myself, my family, and my neighborhood, and my people. You know, gratitude is your prayer. Not, I need a new pair of shoes. I need the numbers to lottery, you know, okay? Because people, if your mind is retarded, money is not the antidote. 90% of people who hit the lottery 10 years afterwards are actually more broke than they were before, in debt. Because they still had an upside down mind. They had a poor person's thinking with a whole lot of money. So what do? Go out and buy a $5 million house, 4 brand new cars. You can only drive one. 4 brand new cars. Then they can't pay the taxes on the house. The cars are repossessed and they lost all their money because once you drive it off the lot, it's depreciated by 90%. Okay, and now they got owe all these people money, relatives they never saw came out of the woodwork. Okay, so you still have to change your thinking paradigm. So having a check, having money is not going to solve the problems that African people have. It's changing your mind. This is your bank account right here. So my sister, thank you, I appreciate that too. And those vibrations of the universe, when's the last time somebody hugged a tree?
Yesterday.
Well, you got 3, 4 tree huggers in here? Go to the park, y'all. Go out and hug a tree. Take your shoes off. Walk barefooted. Get in touch with Earth.
I think the only apple tree in the whole neighborhood for the apples, and I collected apples from Tuesday until yesterday and made a pie last night. Hug the tree.
I'm coming over for dessert. Okay, all right. That's me.
Hi, thank you for your lecture. Really appreciate it. I'm learning a lot. I just recently had my DNA done through Ancestry DNA because I wanted to know what parts of Africa are in me. And what I found interesting, one of them is Cameroon, and they are herdsmen and farmers. And I have a green thumb where people bring me their sick plants. Okay. And I walk out my apartment and there's dying plants. Sick. They don't even say who it's from.
The word got out. Huh?
The word got out. And I give out, little snippets of plants and they say they do very well. So my question to you, I'm from Ivory Coast and Cameroon. Do you think it's important for most African Americans or Africans to find out what part, do you think this is important for Africans to do, to find out what their DNA is so they can concentrate on what part of Africa they're from and try to, do their research and everything?
Yes and no. Okay, I'll do the yes first. The yes is because now you're not just wondering and guessing. Even though my father is from Tanzania, and I was raised in Tanzania, my kids still did a DNA testing, my son and my daughter. And it said that your heritage comes from Eastern Africa, and it also had Western Africa, and it had some Native American in it. And my son's was almost identical to mine, but my daughter had 0.1% Neanderthal. I said, that's your mama. And it just so happened that her mother's great-grandmother was European. Okay, so that's where that 0.1% Neanderthal. But it didn't show up in my son's DNA at all. But my daughter, I guess the mitochondria hold on to that. So my daughter had 0.1, so she's still mad at her mother. Okay, good. But now the no part to that, ma'am, was that we belong to the continent. That's up. So I'm saying, even if you don't know what particular ethnic group you belong to, you know that you are African. I'm saying, go adopt one. Did you hear me? Just go adopt. I want to be Zulu. Go to South Africa, connected to the Zulu. I want to be Ashanti. Go to Ghana. You are the captain of your ship. You claim the captain navigates where he wants to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you don't know specifically, you can adopt Africa. You can go around Africa and say, well, I've been to 5 different countries, but I like these people the best. I'm going to make that my home. You have the right to do that. And most African countries today still will accept you in as an African from America. There's almost no African country, unless it's some Arab country, you know, they have no problem with, you know, you coming in and getting land and things of that nature and repatronizing. And sometimes there's even organizations that are set up to help you repatronize and land grants. And what you need to do is you need to seek out some chiefs and seek out some kings in Africa. Come, show your homage. They will induct you into their nation and give you some land.
That's true.
But you gotta go there with something. Remember we talked about the experts? You gotta have something to offer. Don't go there thinking you're just gonna squat. They got enough squatters, so they don't need to import some squatters, okay? All right. So you need to go there with your skills and your expert, and you will be welcome almost into any nation. You go there showing with a good heart, you go there with my art, you will have no problem. In fact, I was just in Zimbabwe. There's a whole organization for repatronization for Africans in America. They're welcoming you in, you know, giving you land, set you up. But they want you to come in, put a business, they want you to come and do something. So we're going back to that formula again. Ancestors, esteemed elders, experts. They're looking for experts. They got ancestors and elders. They need some experts. That's where you come in. Remember, we are the most educated group of Africans in the diaspora. And we're not using it. And we're not employing even ourselves here. So we got to change our paradigm. Yes, young man. Ma'am, did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Brother.
Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. I have 2 questions, actually. My first question is, I have a 7 and a 4-year-old, and I've begun homeschooling.
Excellent.
I have signed them up for the Kamali Academy, which is an online, independent, African-based schooling. But I wanted to know what other tips or resources would you give? That's my first question. And my second question is, we're working on our plant domain and our mineral domain at home. Recently, I started looking into buying crystals to put into my plants to increase the growth and the spirituality within the plants. What would be the...
All right, first let me do the first question first and the second one. The first thing is that, copy this when you get back, CB, C-I-B-I, Council of Independent Black Institutions. And one of the heads right now is in Trenton, New Jersey, the Garvey School. So if you look up Brother Kemet, so you can just look them up on the internet, Kemet. They have people who are doing who are doing homeschooling. They actually have kits, or they can direct you. They have curriculums that have already been developed by the Council of Independent Blacks. Remember, they've been around for over 100 years, and they've been revised, okay? So they're designed to do what I told you we need to do. So they have curriculums in history, curriculums in science, curriculum in language, you know, like in Swahili and a couple other things like that. So that already exists. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. But I would recommend that you teach these kids when they're that young. How old are they? 7 and 4. But do nature while they're young like that. When they're your age, they'll be our new scholars. They'll be the scribes of the neighborhood. People, you gotta learn, you gotta change your paradigm. You start at 4 or 5. By the time they're teenagers, I taught my kids this. By the time they were teenagers, I allowed them to go to high school, to a regular high school. My daughter finished with straight A's. Now she's finished her 2nd master's degree in cultural anthropology and wrote her own grant. Her and this Nigerian got a $20 million grant on studying stress for African people. My son, when he was 8 years old, he knew what he wanted to be. So I put him in culinary art school. I let him go to Voltech High School because he thought he was Michael Jordan. Okay, when he found out he wasn't Jordan, then he went on to college. Now he's a master chef. And he can take any food that you have in the Wazungu world and turn it into vegetarian, and you wouldn't know the difference. So you got to cultivate, you homeschool, or you get around people who have like minds, you put them in the independent black institute. Don't send your school kids off to the Fox school. All right? And that's what we do. We take our brightest and we give them to our enemies. And our enemies love that. And they want to give your bright black kids scholarships because they're going to use them up. And that's what they do. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. The second part of her question dealt with minerals. Yes, people, you know, it's a proven fact. If you put certain crystals like quartz crystal and rose quartz and citrine in your plants, the plants flower up. It does the same thing around you. When you have this around your house, there's the vibration, there's an energy. There are certain minerals. If you rub malachite and rose quartz, it will dissipate pain in the body. You have a headache. My students who testify, they had a headache. You put the amethyst up to his head, it stopped almost instantly. He's here tonight, he'll testify. I teach a crystallology class. We teach people, you don't have to use drugs. You can just use natural herbs or crystals and gemstones. Why do you think we were mining stones for 100,000 years? Look at ancient Kemet and look at lapis lazuli, carnelian, citrine, amethyst, turquoise. These constant stones are used over and over again. Why? Amethyst, the pineal gland, opens up your pituitary gland, your master gland, allows you, connects you to your dream state, your fifth dimension, so that you can master the fourth and the third dimension. That's all done with a crystal. The high priest wears purple. Why? It's the highest octave that the human eye can perceive, or those colors are related to purple. Blue, that dark blue, indigo, lapis lazuli stone, called the wisdom stone. Every ruler surrounds himself with lapis lazuli. Why? It opened up their pineal gland and allowed them to remember, tap into ancestral memory, tap into the Akashic Records. This is a crystal, it's a gemstone, it's energy. Turquoise, the throat. And the reason why it's the most used stone among indigenous and Native Americans, it allowed you to communicate with the ancestors. It kept you in real-time reality, and it helped you accent the spiritual domain of nature. And so that's why the indigenous North and South used turquoise. Turquoise was used in ancient Kemet. The throat chakra, the thymus gland here. Heart, green and pink. Green, the healing, pink, the emotional. And so if a person's hyper and they have a rose quartz and they rub it, it helps bring them down. If you need healing, the green stone, like malachite, aventurine, jade. The ancient Asians used to trade jade equal with gold. Every member of the family had a piece of jade, so that when they went on the village, if they were 100 miles away and they got into stress, the other person would feel it through their jade and know something's wrong with that family member. It's a vibration, it's energy. This is not hocus pocus. This is waves of energy in the universe. It's just like somebody can turn on a radio in Japan and you can pick it up in America. Those waves are traveling all around the planet. But you gotta have the right equipment. You gotta be open, right? If you got a little cheap transistor radio, you can't even get New Jersey. Okay, all right? So you gotta open up your channels. Eating the right food, sneaking the right food, meditating each day. I'm gonna teach y'all a meditation too before I go. So sister, yes. Europeans teach you 7 chakra centers. I teach my students, you'll see in Laila, Africa, we have, as African people, have 12 major centers. 7, the reason why that's pushed is because that's an upgrade for Europeans. Most Europeans only have like about 5 open. So 7 is like, heaven for them. 7 for you as an African is what? A downgrade. And that's what they need to do. They need, look, I just talked about the Olympics. Every world record in any running event is held by an African. Go check me out. Look at the Guinness Books of World. I'm talking about from the marathon, 26 miles, to the 100 meters. Every running steeplechase, jumping through water, held by Africans or a person of African lineage. They don't want you to tap in. Imagine, you would do that in the corporate office. You would do that as the engineer, you would do, look, we invented the computer, we invented the cell phone. Imagine if we was doing it for us. And that's what they're afraid of. So sister, get your crystals and get them on. Put them around the house, in the plants. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. I heard that the pineal gland in the African is active and in the European it's calcified. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, you heard some good. Let me explain. Let me give you a little research behind that. During the Vietnam War, everybody that was deceased of American, they did an autopsy on it. And Europeans used to think that they thought that your pineal gland was like your appendix. You didn't really need it because 90% of Europeans, it is ineffective. What they found out is that 85% of all the African American soldiers who died, their pineal gland was active and juicy like a grape. 85 to 90% of all Europeans who died in the Vietnam War of American soldiers, their pineal gland was calcified like a stone. So now they began to do the little study. But let me say this. Who's the lady who asked that right here? 10% of Europeans have an open pineal gland. And 10 to 15% of Africans don't have a closed one. So it's just the reverse. So you could be black as smut and have a calcified pineal gland. Or you could be white as snow and have it open. But let me say this, all children have an open pineal gland. And Europeans calcify, their gland doesn't get calcified till they reach puberty. That's why you can have, during like slavery and even now, a black mammy, right? And a little white kid love mammy to death. And then they grow up, and they're like, send her to the fields. Okay? Because now his gland, he ain't connected to everything. But all children's pineal gland is open. They're attached to the world. They can feel everything. That's because they need this just to survive as a human being. But now, when they go into puberty, now they're beginning to go into the niche of the culture. So if you've come from a racist culture, then that pineal gland closes up and they tap into that. Okay, it's just like, you notice on TV, all white people can dance on TV? I went to a white high school, nobody could dance. I'm like, where did they find these Europeans? They must have auditioned 5,000 Europeans to get one that can dance, and then you saw those on TV, you know. And we know, you know, they say all black people can dance. We know, just among us, we know all of us cannot dance. Okay? Okay, so the idea though is to cultivate the pineal gland. So yes, ma'am, most Europeans, that's why they can't even feel the problems we have. They're not even in touch with it. Crimes against humanity. Europeans exterminated all the people in Tasmania. And they're not even mad about it. The Australians, they're not upset about that they exterminated the original people in Australia, the Aborigines. Just like they were there, they was in the way. They only got 5 centers open, and their pineal gland is calcified. So they're not even even the white Americans, they don't have no remorse for the Native Americans that were here. The very people who are telling people to go back where they come from, they stole this land, telling other people to go back. They don't have a connection. Their pineal gland closed. Okay? And there are exercises you can do to enhance your pineal gland. But it all goes back to meditation. Meditation should be taught in pre-K all the way up. Y'all should have meditation hour at home. At my house, we used to have a study hour. Study hour, everybody studied. So it wasn't like kids, y'all get a book. They saw daddy, mommy with a book, cousins. If a neighbor came over, I gave him a book. Everybody, this is study time, y'all. Okay, so and then you have a meditation time. Everybody has to be in this. Now, if that becomes part of their life, their communication to divinity is open.
Did you?
Oh. All right.
So, ma'am, did I answer your question?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
One thing I wanted to ask is that in the Vatican, there's a huge depiction.
The pine cone.
Yeah, because it looks like a pine cone.
Right. If you see, in fact, yes, if you see that, right in the middle of the Vatican in Rome, there's a pine cone. Pine cone is symbolic of the pineal gland. If you look at cuneiform, if you look at the ancient Chaldeans, if you look at Sumer, if you look at all those rulers, they would hold the pine cone. We knew we were touched and connected to the universe. And you'll notice that even the early Babylonians, the Chaldeans, all of them, their leaders were great falcons and lions. There's no lions there. In China, the most sacred dance is the lion's dance. There's no lions there. That all comes from us traveling around the world. So, and that's why when you're learning our story, you need a timeline. So when we talk about everybody on the planet, and we talk about ourselves, you can see in perspective of where they were. So when you're homeschooling your kids, you have to have a timeline up. So you can say, all right, when we were doing Mfundishi, when we were writing this 6,000 years ago, let's see who else was writing. And you start looking blank, 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 blank. And then you'll find out that when they try to say cuneiform, black people from ancient Kush created that. The blackheads. Not because they wore black hats. Okay, they came from ancient Kush also. The Dravidians in Europe, in India, coming from Africa, Sri Lanka, all this connection. So you need a timeline so you can see. When you look at the Olmec heads, that's during the time when the Kushite, the fourth golden age, where we travel. Mm-hmm. So we need to see a timeline so we can put everything in its proper spatial perspective. You don't want to be, what's the word? You don't want orientation. If you're getting ready to go to orientation, you're getting ready to get bamboozled. When you go to your job, what do they say? Go to what first? Orientation. Orientation. We're going to tell you, do this, do that, or you get fired. You go to a new European school, what's the first thing you got to go to? Orientation. Do this, or we dismiss you. Instead of telling you what you need to do to flourish, just give me proper spatial perspective and then I can flourish. Our children don't have proper spatial perspective. They've been orientated in these Western schools, whether it's a black school or white school. Give them proper spatial perspective and they'll know where to home into their expertise.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Yeah, speak loud.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Louder, louder, louder.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Not like you
Huh?
speak.
Oh, the button? The button?
No.
Okay. Well, I never heard about you before, but I accept everything you taught today, and it's hard for me to accept everything anybody taught today and stuff. You talk about a lot of stuff, man. Even I'm sitting up there getting my questions ready to throw you. You said something about the Tasmanian piece, and I'm like, wow, you really did study, because not too many people talk about that. But anyway, I really want to ask you about, you talked about the first Holy Trinity. And okay, I accept that, but you didn't mention Osiris, Isis, and Amen. And I was wondering if you, or did he say that? I'm sorry, maybe I missed it. He did say that? Well, that's incorrect. God, man, I got so many questions, but I really wanted to, my cousin is interested in what book were you in?
Clarify the spelling and the pronunciation of the Madu, what is it?
Mfundishi?
Yeah, please. And
Yeah, I'm a board here, but it's Madu is a walking stick word. It means wise words of an elder. Necha is a flag, which means divinity, that which is divine. And symptomatically, okay, good. One of my students prepared. So if the camera can pick this up. The language is called Madu Necha. But the word Necha is written first. And we call this honorific ordering. If you and your grandparents is getting ready to eat, who eats first? Who do you serve first? Children. No, you serve the grandparents first. In the Western world, they serve the children first. If you're walking in some place, and who comes in first? The elders. If you're getting ready to honor and give homage, who do you ask for permission? The elders. That's part of an African culture. I did a workshop one time at this Ukrainian center in Somerset, and they fed the children, the babies first, and the children, coming from a European paradigm, because for them, living in the cold, they needed to make sure the babies survived or they knew they would cease to exist. So all their energy was on the babies first, and grandparents, they figured they had their time. They ate last. So babies first, then the mothers and the fathers, and then they fed the grandparents if there was some leftover food. So their culture, and it's not that that was wrong. That's their culture. That's how they were connected with nature. In fact, just real quick, the reason why European blondes, blue-eyed blondes get the most attention is because they were the most receptive and the most vulnerable in their society. They died out quickly. And so they got special attention as babies. And so that's why the blondes got more attention. That's why they have the dumb blonde joke, because they're the most receptive. No blondes win Olympic gold medals. No, go check me out. Even the Europeans who do win are dark melanated Europeans, you know, who are more Mediterranean and have dark hair and dark brown eyes, okay? But, brother, you see this down here? This says nature, the word where the word nature comes from. And so walking stick and the flag into divinity. In ancient Kemet, when the wind blew, if you were working in the fields, you stopped. And you would put your hand and let the breeze, that was the ancestors coming to bless you. And all throughout all of Eastern Africa, you see it in Ethiopia, you see it in Tanzania, Kenya, okay? So symptomatic thought, we connected elements with the Creator. So we use these elements in our writing. So I'm just trying to show you. So this is, the language is alive. It's working, it's teaching you, it's showing you perspective, it's showing you how to relate to your elders, how to relate to nature. And don't put them between two pieces of bread.
Okay. Dr. Ellis.
NT, in English is Madu is MDW, Madu, and NTCHR, or some people go NTR. Nature, but I spell it NTCHR because I understand the glyphs.
We're going to take one more question from Dr. Ellis. But before, I just want to recognize a few people. I want to recognize my nephew, who is like my son. I have 3 sons. This one, would you stand?
Joel.
And,
Welcome.
I'm still waiting on the other 2. One, I think, will be here about 2 o'clock. I want to recognize Sister Coley Clark, who is Special Assistant to many others. And we'll be hearing from her next Saturday. Besides her is Dr. Charles Pitts, Brother Pitts. We'll be hearing from him also next Saturday. And I want to thank all the people who have assisted us getting set up for breakfast and everything. Where's Joanne? Because we need to get set up for lunch. And I think we'll be set up for lunch in about 10 minutes. It's already ready. So we're going to take one other question from Dr. Gloria Ellis. And then we're going to break for lunch. And we got a surprise for you when we come back.
Thank you for this opportunity. Brother, I wasn't sure about your name.
Mfundishi.
Mfundishi. And I'm the type of person, I like to see what I'm saying, so it's MFU.
MDISH. It's a Bantu word. So even in South Africa, they know it means spiritual teacher. It actually means spiritual grandmaster. But throughout the whole, no matter where I go in Africa, when they hear the word Mfundishi, they know the root means to teach.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for a powerful lecture. I'm educated in the European system, and I have some skills, but I became very much aware that what you taught today was that connection of our heritage, our legacy to Africa, to those native Egyptians in the Nile who built the pyramids and all that. And what you were able to provide was a whole notion of the paradigm of symptomatic thinking
Yes.
versus
Symbolic.
that was powerful for me. I mean, and to, you know, the whole notion that we honor gods or things that, why do you pray to these objects? Wow, it gave some meaning to what our forefathers did. I just wish that your lecture had in some way had a format or a, what would you call it, a lead sheet so that we could follow and take notes. I took copious notes, but I couldn't keep up with you because you said so much, and I don't know if all of you guys are like me. I can't remember everything he said, so I had to write it down. But in order to go back, when I leave here, I will go back and review my notes, and I probably will have more questions then, because I was just trying to keep up with you. But I would like to know if you have anything written or that kind of traces what you, that is kind of follow your outline of what you presented today, because I think it would be beholden us to have some, for me, have something to take home with me so I can read it a little bit more. I'm just fascinated. I want to make that connection with some of those things that you said, which would be my education about myself from my elders, from where I came from, that somehow or another been disconnected with. And it's clear that we've been disconnected through European education. You know that.
I appreciate your question. Thank you very much. So people, the symbolic, let me explain. Racism can only exist through symbolic thought. Religion can only exist through symbolic thought. In fact, all of the wars that existed in recorded history is because of symbolic thought. You're being colonized through symbolic thought. I just throw some symbols out here, tell you to believe them, and then you fight and give your life over it without even knowing what it's about. Racism can only exist. Einstein said that racism was a disease. You don't like somebody and you never even met them. I don't like black people, never even met no black people. I don't like people with straight hair, you never even met nobody like that. I don't like people because of the color of their eye. This is all symbolic thought. Symptomatic thought is I have to have a relationship with that. You see, for African people, in order to be our enemy, you had to do something to us. Let me just give you a scenario. If you came to the shores of Africa 2,000 years ago, they would welcome you. They want to know where you're from. They're going to feed you. They're going to bring you into the village. Everybody want to come and try to touch you or something, right? Now you come to Northern Europe 2,000 years ago. You would be for dinner. And then after they killed you and ate you, they say, I wonder where she was from. Because she was tasty. Okay? All right. Difference, connection. Our intuitive, symptomatic thought versus I want to experience you. I want to be part of that energy as opposed to somebody else's definition of what that energy is. Yes?
So there are a couple things. I have been meeting with some of the folks in this group. I feel amiss in not being a part of the 10-week program, but having come in a little late, I'm really appreciative of your presentation. But for some of us that are meeting, that are dealing with the issues of violence against
symbolic thought.
That's symbolic thought. So how do we, kind of deal with that in reality right now, in the real? I'm not dismissing what I've said earlier, but this is a crisis. We can walk out of this door right away and somebody gets stopped by the cops and bam, bam.
Why are they even fighting? Well, the cop, you have to understand, even the police, imagery, they're here to protect private property, not human beings.
That's right.
They're an offshoot of the enslavement system. Their main job was to get runaway slaves. Their main job was to protect the property of plantation owners. And all we've done is shifted to corporations now. That's their main job, to protect corporate property and to keep everybody in their place. That's just like the plantation. That's their job. So when first thing they do is beat you and everything, that's what they've been, the reason why they get off is because they've been programmed to do that. How many people saw the whooping Rodney King got? And no police officer was indicted because they said they were doing what they were trained to do.
I'm with you.
So, ma'am, you have to get in charge of the babies.
But my question is, how do we get, what do we do in our heads when that's happening? When that you walk out there, what do we do in our heads now? How do we deal with that in the moment? That's the reality.
Well, first of all, you need leaders who understand symptomatic thought. And you have to start wherever you're at. You have to start to organize, and you have to change your paradigm. We're reacting. That's all this is. We're reacting, and we're not changing our paradigm. Even Black Lives is a reaction to our. We got to go to the root. The root is symbolic thought. We have to be able to, at each stage of life, remember I said you do an inventory of what you need? So you take control of your schools. Don't talk about how bad the school is. Organize your own. Start in basements. Start in churches. This is Make a Beautiful School. You just start wherever you're at. Take control of your food source. Take control of economics. Young guys are out in the street because they don't have no job. And guess what? They don't have a real purpose. Because no one told them they were experts at something. No one told them that they are part of the solution. Let me end with this here. There used to be, no place, you go to any city of America, midday right now, you're gonna see hundreds of brothers standing on the corner. And sometimes holding their private parts. They stand on the corner, yo, what's up? What's happening? How come we don't know what's happening? You go to Houston, what's happening? You go to LA, what's happening? Texas, how come everybody knows what's happening but us? And we on the corner. Now, I'm in Tanzania, and I look, and the brothers are on the corner. But they're protecting the neighborhood. They know what's supposed to be going on. Anybody stranger come in, hey man, watch this guy, let's follow him, boom. One time we knew what we were supposed to do because you were taught from little kids. Little kids are watching their big brothers on the corner, so they can't wait to go in the corner to look out for the village. Any strangers coming. You can't get rid of drugs in the Black community. The police can't. Only the families can, because it's your brother, your sister, your uncle. Y'all the ones selling the drugs. Everybody know who the drug dealers are. Raise your hand if you believe me. We all know we're the only ones that can get rid of drug dealers. When you don't allow them in your neighborhood, when you don't allow them on your porch, when you don't allow them, and guess what? Don't call the police on them. There used to be a movie in the 60s called The Drop Squad. Anybody remember that? Where there was a community people would come together, and the neighborhood drug dealer, they put a blanket over their head, a pillowcase, snatched it, threw them in the car, took them, and they took care of them. Okay? You take care of your own. Some Jewish communities, the police can't come in and arrest them. They have to go to the rabbi. Even if they saw the guy shoot, they go to the rabbi and say, listen, so-and-so said this, so-and-so. And the rabbi would say, okay, we'll deliver him to the police station. That's when you got control. That's symptomatic thought being utilized on an everyday thing. Take control of your community. As a drive-by, you know who did it. You send the appropriate brothers, y'all go pick them up. That's the last drive-by you'll see from that organization. You know who the gangbangers are. We all know. But because we're been taught symbolic thought, we just turn the other cheek. We just turn the other way. And it all stems back from the very beginning. We are not in control of the various institutions that we need to sustain ourselves.
And at one time, you couldn't bring no drug money into the house with your grandmother, your mother. They want to know where that money came from.
Right.
If you didn't have a job where she can find you out during those hours, you wasn't bringing them sneakers, that shirt or nothing, and your ass was out the door, I remember. So it starts at the home.
So it's our mind, we gotta change our mindset, man. So the meetings need to be, what institutions do we need to put in place to change our paradigm? What institutions do we need to put in place to change our economic status? What institutions do we put in place to begin to employ our people in meaningful jobs? What institutions do we need to put in place to control the housing? Like in Harlem, it's controlled by European Jews. They control the housing. And then you upset because they regentrification. No, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. We're not doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Thank you very much. Thank you again. Let's give Brother Mfundishi a standing ovation. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now,